Yeah, I think the administration has four very distinct goals. I think it wants to directly change how the federal government is operating in these areas. I think it wants to change to the fullest extent it can through pressure how federal contractors, those who have contracts with the federal government, and federal grantees, those who get money, grants from the federal government, will treat their employees. Third, it wants to influence how all employers are going to treat their employees, even if they don't have any connection with the government through a contract or a grant. And finally, it wants to influence how the courts are going to interpret the law going forward. These are their four goals as I see them. So with goal number one, hello, the administration has clearly been successful with the federal government since they control that directly. I mean, they have, even without defining DEI, essentially fired all employees who have worked on DEI programs. They have disbanded anything connected to what they call DEI, right? Including, for example, affinity groups. But for the second and third goals, how effective have they been in changing behavior by private employers, whether they're federal contractors, federal grantees, or otherwise? So I think many federal contractors and grantees are risk averse. I mean, they want to avoid trouble, not unexpected. So I think most of them have put their diversity programs through a strict review and analysis, which is actually a good thing to do. I think many of them have changed their terminology away from using the term DEI. And it might be that some have also stopped engaging in perfectly legal diversity efforts because of their concerns about what the government might do. But truly, bottom line is we don't have quantitative data on what is happening. You know, a group like EDGE might have more qualitative data, but there's not quantitative data. I think it's a bit less effective with employers that are not federal contractors or grantees. I mean, my general sense is that while some employers are being overly cautious, backing down from legal DEI efforts, most employers are not. Like, they might not be using the term DEI, but they're focused on figuring out what they can still do without getting into trouble from the government. So that's where my sense is that they're focused. And then on the last goal, which is very important for U.S. employers or folks having, operations in the U.S., with regard to impacting how U.S. courts will interpret the law in terms of what's okay for diversity or otherwise, I don't think this administration is going to be particularly successful, right? I think most U.S. courts are going to continue to interpret Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of '64. That's our federal anti-discrimination employment law. I think they're going to interpret the law consistently with the existing case law. They are not going to change their interpretation because of some executive order or some memo from a government agency. So that's important for employers to understand. I think the law is going to remain the same. So I think employers need to respond in a smart, thoughtful, reasoned and strategic manner. And to go directly to the point you said before, David, especially for companies that have operations or situated in countries that are pushing towards more diversity, to understand that there are things they can do in the US that will be completely consistent with what they're doing in other countries. So they don't have to be sending a completely different message. But here's how they need to do that, okay? Here are some basic parameters. U.S. employers cannot have exclusions based on race or gender or some other protected characteristic, okay? They can't have a professional development program that's open only to Black employees or women. Right? They can't have an affinity group for only Black employees or women, and white employees or men who share the values of those groups can't join. Okay, so they can't have exclusions. They also cannot give preferences based on race, gender, or another protected characteristic. Okay, so they can't say to managers, hey, when you interview someone, please give 10 extra points if the applicant is Black or woman. Now, There was actually a way to do this legally under the US law before, but I would not recommend that approach now. So many employers have not been engaging in these types of exclusions or preferences, but this is a good moment for every US employer to review and refresh its practices. So it ensures it's not engaging in these actions. But this is a moment for US employers to review and refresh, not to review and retreat. Because employers need to keep their eyes on the prize, which is having a fair and inclusive workplace where people want to work for that employer and want to stay, regardless of their race, gender, religion, etc., because that will result in a more diverse workplace for that employer, which is a good thing.